All right. Well, welcome everybody. Coach Chris here today with Dr. Jeff Golini. Really excited about this interview. There's a lot of information floating around in the internet and all over the place lately about creatine. And I thought there's no better person to come here and talk with us today other than Dr. Jeff Golini. He's going to talk to you about creatine. He's going to talk to you about a product that he's created called Kre-Alkalyn and why we believe that may be a better choice for a lot of people out there. So, Jeff, why don't we just start with, what is creatine and where does it come from?
Yeah. So let me give you a little history. So I was the one who brought the creatine monohydrate to the marketplace way back in the early 1990s. It was kind of interesting. A company uh, pre-EAS days called Cal Farm. The owner called me up and said, "Hey, check out this little study or this little blurb that came out in Europe about the Olympic athletes were using something called creatine monohydrate. Can you make it?" So I found a little place in Wisconsin who was producing, research grades. They were making about 25 keys every 9, 10 months. It wasn't commercially available. So I contracted them and they would make it and I would bottle it. And that started the whole creatine monohydrate craze, if you want to call it. Um, I then started to research because I thought, well, this is great, but if these guys decide not to do it or we get to capacity that maybe they can't handle. So I built a creatine plant right here in Billings and we started synthesizing it ourselves. So we were, 2, 3 years way ahead of Creapure. There was no Chinese, there was no nothing. It was just creatine monohydrate. So that's kind of how it came about and got into the marketplace. And, it was kind of interesting from day one. Everybody was complaining about side effects, water retention, bloating, GI issues, dizziness, dehydration, and women would not use it because of that bloat.
Mm-hmm.
So that was something that, we just said, well, it kind of goes with the territory, the benefits sort of outweigh the negative side effects.
Yeah. Well, that's news to me, Jeff. I didn't know you were the guy that brought that back in the
Oh,
90s,
yeah,
man.
man. Probably long before a lot of people listened were even bored. But yep, that was me, man.
Yeah. Right, almost after the bodybuilding days, right? Probably because you would,
It
were you,
was, right after I moved to Billings, and we really started to get into, contract manufacturing. That was really kind of our early days. So, yep, it was, boy, like 90, I want to say 93, maybe something like
wow,
that.
wow. Well, back then, I know when creatine was real popular, it seemed to be real popular with, the serious lifters, the bodybuilders, the fitness people that, were looking to gain more muscle and recovery and everything. But it seems like there's been this, it's coming back again, really, really popular. Here we are, like 30 years later. Do you think that's because of the aging population now, and creatine's kind of becoming more of a longevity product, maybe because for brain health and bone density, those kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, you've been in the supplement industry, health and fitness, as long as I have, and it's kind of like clothing. Things come back around. I
Yeah.
mean, the FDA is really strict, so we can't invent anything new. So all our industry really does is kind of re-resurrect things. I think some of these young 20-year-old um, athletes or influencers discovered creatine
Yeah.
and it started to the kind of started the craze all over again where they had never used it. I think in the past, they were so stuck on pre-workouts and caffeine and stimulants and all these things that they forgot about the basics. And once they started to use creatine, it kind of re-resurrected that whole thing, and it started all over again, same as it was 25 or 30 years ago.
Yeah. Well, like you say, it's funny how that happens. Things start to recycle. You know, things popular in the 80s and 90s are back here now in the 2025. It's kind of like clothes, that they all come back. But talk a little bit, Jeff, about the different types of creatine. I know everybody understands creatine monohydrate, but then there's a creatine HCI that a lot of people I think went to that had some issues with bloating.
Yep.
Is that the case? And then talk about the difference about why you created the Kre-Alkalyn.
Yeah. So again, going back to the early days, one of the things we were trying to do is to make a pure product. So we were really promoting, the purity of this creatine monohydrate at the time we were making. About 3 years after that, German Creapure came onto the market and they were really pushing, purity, purity, purity. So we just kind of went along with that. And I think between the two of us, we were both pushing that. Well, I was in the lab one day, didn't have anything to do, and I thought, we're making effervescent creatines, liquid creatines. We're telling people to mix creatine monohydrate with fruit juice. Maybe the glucose would help get it into the muscle quicker. So I decided to activate the creatine the way we were telling people to do it, adding water. I put it into my near-infrared machine, and all of a sudden I was seeing high levels of creatinine.
Mm.
Thought the machine was not working correctly, started all over again, and same thing. I conversed with a doctor friend of mine, a PhD in chemistry, and he said, "Well, yeah, creatine has a flaw." And I forgot about the research I read way back from the 1800s, which is how I learned how to synthesize it. There was, I think they were Scandinavian, were the first guys that actually synthesized creatine, and they said there was a flaw, that it just wasn't stable. So I decided to do a little research project to see if I can figure out what was going on. And I discovered the lower the pH, so the more acidic the environment, the quicker that conversion took place. But it instantaneously started to convert even in just water.
Wow.
I then raised the pH up to about 16, and I was able to get that conversion to stop.
Mm.
And that's what led to the patents on Kre-Alkalyn, is I came up with a way during the synthesis process to elevate that pH so that it would be completely stable in solution. I then found out that all those side effects were from the creatinine, not the creatine monohydrate. So, if you go out and you look up safety studies, they'll say, oh, creatine monohydrate is completely safe. There's never been any issues. And I agree with that. But it's the creatinine that is an issue. Creatinine is a bile waste. It's very toxic. Our bodies need to get rid of it because as we spend creatine, the exhaust or what we burn is creatinine. If you go in for a physical, your doctor is going to do a urinalysis and he's going to measure your creatinine levels and make sure that your kidney is excreting the right amount. And if you have too much, then you could be potentially on your way to kidney failure. And kidney damage is one of the few, if not only, organs that doesn't repair itself.
Right.
So once you damage those kidneys, so when we figured this out, obviously Kre-Alkalyn became very popular. As I started to research it, we had no side effects. So our claim was no loading, because in the beginning, again, I'm not very proud of this, but we saw a little study that mentioned in Europe that maybe taking 10 or 20 grams the first week or two could benefit. And of course, we're going, well, dang, we're selling a 100-gram bottle for $100 and we're getting one a month cash. We can get 3 a month if we tell people to load. So it really was a marketing ploy. Again, I'm not proud of it, but that's, was young and stupid. And anyhow, so with Kre-Alkalyn, you didn't have to load. My studies showed that 1.5 grams was really enough because your body would burn that up in about 3.5 hours. And keep in mind, creatine monohydrate, Kre-Alkalyn is creatine monohydrate. It's just a buffered form, is the only form that your body can actually uptake and convert. Now, later on, creatine HCl, as you mentioned, was introduced. Their claim to fame was it's soluble in solution. They would take 50 grams and put it in a cup of water and go, watch, it dissolves. But creatine monohydrate and Kre-Alkalyn are water soluble at the doses recommended. So it's all soluble. But I always tell people solubility has nothing to do with how it's absorbed.
Yeah.
Those are completely different aspects. And to make creatine HCl, you have to take creatine monohydrate, subject it to hydrochloric acid, and
Mhm.
convert it into a creatine salt. So now you've only got about 30% creatine and the rest a hydrochloric salt.
Mm.
So you really have cut the amount that you're taking, and people will say, well, it works. Well, yeah, I mean, once creatine gets into the bloodstream, whether it's from steak, Kre-Alkalyn, monohydrate, HCl, or whatever form, it's all the same once
Mm.
it's converted to that phosphate molecule. But it's the instability issue that is the problem. It's that creatinine.
Interesting. Well, that's great. I'm learning a lot today, Jeff. It's awesome, and I think there's so much misinformation out there. This is going to be really good for people to understand. And you know, you and I have been in this industry a long time, and started taking the creatine early on, and a lot of people have problems with the bloating and stuff like you as you said, but we just sucked it up and did it. And I gotta say, having had that experience, and then now using the crackling, I tell you, it's amazing because I know how good it is for us. I'm 67 now, so my goals are a lot different now than they were in my 20s and 30s when we were bodybuilding. Right.
Yep. Yep.
But I love the science coming out on brain health and bone
Oh,
density, all that stuff, right?
and what you got to remember is creatine is so important that our body produces it. Without it, we cease to exist. Our
Wow.
body would not live. So we produce about 2 to 3 grams
Mm.
and we substitute that getting creatine from our meats. But again, by the time it's converted into, a usable form, depending on how we cook our meats, we convert a lot of that creatine to creatinine.
Mm.
Um, any athlete or active person needs to take in, extra creatine from a supplement form. Once we use our glycogen, the creatine is what kicks in that whole energy cycle. So recuperation, recovery, endurance, and stamina, every walk of life, whether you're a soccer mom, a business guy, grandma, grandpa, running after kids, a professional athlete. I mean, that's what we're all looking for, right? The faster
Absolutely.
we can recover, the quicker we grow, the faster we can run. We minimize injuries, brain, all the research that's being done for, things like Alzheimer's, all the muscular different ailments and such. Just a phenomenal thing, but you got to get a pure form that isn't going to convert to that creatinine, which is Kre-Alkalyn.
No, and I love it, Jeff. I'm so excited that you brought that to the market. Since we've been using it at the center here now, we've sold hundreds and hundreds of bottles, and it's just great to hear the feedback, from the clients. We serve a 50 plus population. So again, all the things you just mentioned, the benefits that are coming out of that uh, are significant. I think it's one of those products that everybody should be on. I mean, there's just absolutely no side effects, and the upside is so huge.
And especially as you know, as people age, they typically eat less protein.
Yeah.
Less protein means less creatine, and it's just one of those things. I mean, I'm sure, like yourself and me, I don't eat as much as I did when I was
No.
20.
No.
I still eat protein, but the average person you look, I mean, they'll have a salad, they'll have a coffee and toast for breakfast, a salad for lunch, and then maybe they'll eat some meat for dinner, or they're vegan or vegetarian, which again, that's fine, but you're getting no creatine.
No.
So we're wondering why today we have so many mental, like Alzheimer's and dementia and all these muscular issues that we didn't have back in the 30s and 40s when people ate a lot of meat back then,
Oh
you
yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's a correlation between that, but again, as you said, it is really one of those mainstays that I always tell people, multivitamin number one, Kre-Alkalyn number two. Those are two important things at any age, and even
Yeah.
kids. I'll put a 10, 11-year-old on just a small
Mhm.
dose of Kre-Alkalyn. Again, it helps them with recovery. Kids don't eat. well.
Yeah.
I was just in a meeting at Rocky, our college here, meeting with the basketball team. And, college kids don't eat right.
No.
So, we're getting them on Kre-Alkalyn because again,
Nice.
they understand the importance of, again, keeping the body fueled. So
Yeah. Well, Jeff, I appreciate the integrity and everything you do, and what you formulate. It's sad out there. There's so many supplements on the market that people don't test. A lot of the raw materials coming out of China that's contaminated, and the way you do everything and your testing and all that, we just really, really appreciate, because I know that so many people are buying things in different places and have no idea where that raw material is coming from.
it's crazy, and people will come in here and they will tour, our plant here in Billings, and they'll go to our quality control lab. And I mean, we have the most sophisticated stuff you've seen. It's like going into a drug plant and they go, "Is this required by FDA?" And I'm like, "No." "Why do you do it?" And it's like, I'm an athlete. I mean, when I retired, I put it into making supplements. And as you know, we strive to be the best and to put out the best. When I was bodybuilding, I mean, I had the best weightlifting belt, wraps, I ate the best. Well, to produce supplements, I can't take any vendor's word for it. I don't care
No.
how reputable they are. I got to test everything. And then are we going to make mistakes during manufacturing? Absolutely. They're humans.
Yeah.
That's why we test, because we can fix. So nothing we would put out would ever be dangerous, would ever have a drug contamination, and would not meet label claim. But again, the reason why is, I like to sleep good at night, and I tell people I sleep like a baby,
No,
I know
no.
we're quality stuff, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what separates you. I had the opportunity to come visit your place there a few years back, man. And I've been in a lot of contract manufacturing type facilities. And yeah, you guys just knocked that out of the park. And like you said, what I really appreciated, a lot of things that you're doing, you're just doing because that's who you are. It's not because you have to do it. There's a lot of people consuming supplements out there that are actually harming them more than helping them.
Yeah, and like you said, unfortunately, so much stuff comes in from out of the country. And I think people really saw that during COVID when the government allowed baby formula to come in and all kind of issues. And they realized the quality was low. FDA is very strict here in the United States. As long as you are actually registered and you're monitored, we're the number two most regulated industry: nuclear, dietary, then pharmaceutical. And
Wow.
people go, "No, drugs got to do all those studies." Well, that has nothing to do with manufacturing.
Yeah.
The studies are so they can make a claim. We can make a claim too if we do the studies. Like one of my joint products, we took it all the way up to orphan drug status, and we can make a claim, but then it becomes a drug. So that's the difference between supplements and drugs, the study wise. But when it comes to the manufacturing, for the most part, our industry doesn't have a lot of recalls of what we manufacture. Our recalls are imports. But gosh, look at the drug and the food.
Oh,
Every day
all
they're
day long.
recalling stuff. And there's no reason why, no reason why other than they're just cutting corners and saving pennies.
Yeah.
I've been in business since 1985 and we have not had one recall, and we
Wow.
will never have one because again, we know what we're producing, and if we do make a mistake, we either fix it or we start over. I mean, that's just what you got to do in the manufacturing process.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, you've created a lot of amazing products that are changing a lot of lives out there. As we wrap up, anything in the works you're working on that you could talk about, or I know your mind is always thinking, man. You're the guy that's going to come out with something to break through. I just know it.
We do two things. We have the EFX Sports brand, and
Yeah.
then we do contract manufacturing. Most of the contract manufacturing, is just routine work. Although lately we've gotten some nasal sprays and some earwax removal stuff, which is okay. But EFX, those are designed for professional athletes. And I'm just about your age and I still like training. So,
Yeah.
I'm still using things. But I guess the newest thing, we just released a full spectrum amino acid,
Oh.
which contains all 22 amino acids. I have patents on the stability of those, but I am working on something that I think is going to revolutionize things, and it
Right.
has to do with sleep
Oh,
because people don't realize how important sleep is. As you know, that's when we recover, we grow, and with the amount of caffeine, stress, those blue lights from the phones, people don't get good rest at night.
no.
And I'm gonna help people do that. So EFX is working on something that's gonna be pretty cool. When I'm done, I'll get you some out, and then you'll
Right.
sleep like me too.
It can always use good sleep.
Wow,
Yeah.
I'm my own guinea pig when it comes to the EFX products, and if it doesn't work for me, then we don't come out with it.
Yeah.
So
No, I know you're your best. Hey, you're the guinea pig first, man. I get it. Yeah.
gotta work, man. One thing
Yeah.
about bodybuilding, it really taught us to be in tune with our bodies.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We can tell, I mean, what foods are going to work for us, and what supplements are going to work. And usually if it works for me, then it normally works for most people.
Yeah.
So
Well, like you said, Jeff, being in bodybuilding is we both spent years doing that. You learn so much about the human body, and what works, what doesn't work. You remember we were talking about keto back then before keto was even popular.
yeah, I mean, they've rebranded that from Atkins to keto.
Yeah.
I kind of got tired of people always asking me for what I did when I bodybuild, and I just wrote it down in the book. Dr. Jeff's 16-week uh, pre contest secrets, and it was what I did. I mean,
Yeah.
and that last week we ate no carbs. I mean,
Yeah. That's right.
I sodium loaded, and then I carbed, and I had a way of getting rid of water. I didn't use diuretics and
No.
anything like that, and it's kind of funny because probably like yourself, I couldn't wait to get to contest diet time.
Oh, I
I
know.
mean, I was so excited. And you go in the gym today and you hear all these young people moaning about their diet. Oh, my trainer cut my carbs. And I'm like, why are you even doing this sport? You mean you never had a cheat day? Cheat day? For what? It, I spent the whole year getting ready for this show. Now I'm at 16 weeks, and now it's time to get it on and chisel it
That's it.
down.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like,
Well,
after the show, that's when I go have the mud pie and
that's
all
right.
that.
Then we make up for it. Then we make up for
Anyhow,
it. Yeah. Well, Jeff, this has been great. Anything else you want to share in closing here before we wrap up?
yeah, I think I'll just close by stressing for people to be very careful with the supplements they use. I would never say that EFX Sports is the only brand that does a good job. Don't use anybody else's. I always say find out, do they manufacture themselves?
Yeah.
And look into their track record, but be careful, Amazon and the internet just buying the cheapest stuff, because there's a reason why it's cheap. It's like any commodity, the cheaper the cheaper. And as an athlete, if you're really wanting to go somewhere, I would think that you'd want the best helmet. I didn't want a cheap helmet when I played football. I wanted a good helmet.
Yeah.
Same thing with my belts and my food. So again, just be aware of what you're taking, and if it doesn't work, then there's a reason why it didn't work, because creatine should work. Protein, you should be able to feel the recovery. So again, just be aware of where you buy things. And if you have a local health food store or supplement store, they normally really scrutinize things like things that you would carry.
Yeah.
And with the FX Sports brand, I mean, we can make anything. I only put on that brand what is the best of the best and the best technology. And if for some reason there would be something that would come out that I would need to upgrade, then we would. So again, just be aware of what you take.
Well, I appreciate it, Jeff, and always appreciate your time. And it's time for me to make
Absolutely.
another trip out to see it in Montana, man.
Anytime, man. Come on out. We'll do some hunting, get some wild game, and
Right
you know,
on.
with the grass-fed beef and chicken that you're now selling, and
Yeah.
roll like crazy.
All right,
Thanks.
brother. Well, I'm going to sign off here. I'll be right back with you.